Hey viewers, welcome back for yet another campaign diary. As always, I'm Peter, and this is it. As you guys can see, the title is Finale, and that is because this is it. This was the final session of the campaign. I didn't intend it to be so, but that's what it ended up being. So, before we get into all the kind of the nitty-gritties of what happens now and why is this the last session and stuff like that, let's get down and I'll just start telling you guys the story, because that's what you guys kind of, I think, are here for most of the time. So when last we left our heroes, in the last session it had ended with Danny, Elias, and Sam as Gray going down to Renevas, and they'd gone to kind of get some information, kind of do some scouting, and Fritzolas showed up, and he managed to capture Gray, and then the other two, that's where we had stopped, and I had later sent a text to Elias and Danny saying, hey, basically you guys get out of there. You guys return to Uvengard safe and sound. And so when we started off, we were back at Uvengard. We had the whole party together. This session, we started off with with everyone but Esther and Brayden. Brayden never was able to show up, but Esther was able to make it later. So she didn't show up at first. She showed up about halfway through the session. But they started off at Uvengard, and they basically were kind of like, I think after the last session, and kind of hearing some of my frustration, I think they kind of said, all right, we are ready to go to Renevas. Kind of the last couple things, they like, all right, General Jerome, you're in charge. Don't kill anybody. Don't make sure nobody kills anybody else. Keep a lid on things, naturally. And they're like, all right, we ride at dawn, and they said like they ride off, and this time I just had them roll a single d12. They rolled like an 8, and I said, there's a storm, the night before you reach Renevas, there's a storm with like lightning and all that jazz. And I did that in part because I kind of it was a bit of an omen, but also we had just the previous night to playing, we had a massive thunderstorm here in the Tri-Cities, so therefore I thought it was I think it'd be kind of fun to we had a thunderstorm in real life. Well, there's a thunderstorm here in the game. But so they get to the gates, and of course I explain, the city's a lot more kind of on high alert. The guards, they stop you and they kind of say, all right, what are you guys doing here? And the party decides, all right, well, we can't obviously tell them why we're actually here. So, yeah, we're starting up a new little kind of settlement, and we've got some chickens, but they're sick, and we can't seem to do anything to make them to get them to heal. And kind of just the complete bogus, whatever they pulled out of their hats, but they rolled well with their deceptions, and so the guards were like, alright, get in. And so the players got in, and I had expected originally for them to spend more time in the city, maybe try to find some other stuff, but they just said, we're going to ride straight up to the castle. Okay. So they ride right up to the castle, they get there, they there's guards right at the front. So what it is Renevas has a river that cuts basically right through the middle. And part of that river has been diverted into the moat. So the castle is basically on an island in the middle of kind of almost a small lake in the middle of the city. And so of course there's the drawbridge across it. And there's guards, at the front at the the mainland side of the drawbridge, and they stop and say, hey, what are you guys doing here? And prior to this, the players had all told them, all right, we're going to put on, commoner clothes, kind of regular, everyday clothes rather than our armor. And they said, we'll just kind of, keep everything in our bags, and we'll just carry those. They said, all right. And so when they approached the guards, they're like, hey, we're kitchen staff. We're here to bolster the ranks. You guys have some sort of guests coming. And at first they tell them, the guards are like, oh, okay, that's fine. And they go, and they're like, that kind of gets them through the first round. But then I had guards at the other side of the moat house, right at kind of the portcullis gates. And the guards are there kind of, hey, wait a second, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, hey, we're kitchen staff. We're kind of reinforcement. You guys have guests coming. And they rolled their deception. I rolled my insight checks. I kind of do a wisdom save for deception, stuff like that, charisma for more persuasion kind of stuff, but I roll there. I roll in front of them, and they roll a 15, and I roll a 16 total. And the player's like, well, crap. Then Danny says, oh, wait, I'll use my bend luck ability, as he's a sorcerer, and he rolls a d4, basically. So, and he rolls a 3. So I was like, all right, you guys succeed. Boom. The guards are like, wait, what? Yes, who's coming? But then one of the other guards shout up, oh yeah, I remember hearing something about the elves from the west are sending a delegation to talk to us, and the main guard they were talking to is like, oh, okay, all right, then head inside. And Players are like, all right, great. Where's the kitchen? And the guard's like, oh, okay, it's you go into the courtyard, you take like the west door and head in. And the player's like, okay, great. So they get in there, and then they're like, all right, we're in the castle now, and then you get through, and there's a courtyard at first before you actually kind of get the rest of the whole building, and there's walls around everything. But they get there, and they get into the courtyard, and they're trying to think, okay, well, what now? Where do we go? Where would Fritzolas be? I mean, we know he's here in the castle, but where in the castle, of course? And they're like, all right, let's roll an insight check. Can we get maybe some ideas of where this? And I said, sure. And they roll like upper teens. And I said, all right, well, he could be in the throne room. That would make a lot of sense. He's probably taking Bartholomew's chambers as his own, so maybe he's in there. Or he's also gathering up a bunch of people, so perhaps he's in the dungeons. Now, I knew from the very beginning that he was going to be in the dungeon. I kind of had three. I kind of had the three options, and I thought I'd actually prepared a secret passage up to the throne room from another part of the city that I had. If the players had asked the right questions, they would have discovered, and they could have used that. And if they had done that, then he would have been in the throne room, because that would have made it kind of feel cool. Like, oh, you guys get in there, and sure enough, kind of there he is. And maybe I would have put him in the chambers instead. But I kind of figured, all right, the guys, when they kind of were like, all right, we're going in, I was like, okay, he's in the dungeons. That's where he is right now. But the players thought, he's probably, let's try his chambers. They're like, okay, well, how do we kind of sneak around? And they came up with this idea of, okay, well, we're kitchen staff, so let's make a platter, of food for him, and we'll be bringing that up to him, we're bringing it to his chambers for him. Of course, liches don't eat or drink, so it's questionable, but, I was like, okay, that's valid, and I don't think my players ever knew this, and maybe I should have told them. I was like, the people don't really know that Fritzolas is a lich. For him, to everybody else, Fritzolas is just a tyrannical ruler who's clearly of some sort of elvish descent, and thus that's why he's been living so long. Therefore, it's like, okay, so therefore, people would kind of buy the fact that, oh, they're bringing him a food platter, and of course they decided, well, we're going to make it, we're going to smell we're going to make it like olives and cheese. I'm like, all right, whatever. And so they're like, well, can we find the kitchen? And at first I'm like, well, okay, roll perception. They don't do too well. And then Sam's like, Sam decides, as Elizabeth, he's going to roll a survival check. And he says, one of my favorite enemies, because that's one of your abilities as a ranger, you get a couple enemy types that are your favorite. So his favorite types are dragons and undead, which means he gets basically advantage when he's trying to roll to track them. So he rolls to track Fritzolas, trying to track the undead. And I said, no, you really couldn't do that because Fritzolas isn't going to leave a trail. And tracking is kind of usually you trying to follow a trail, whether it be footprints or the smell or something or there were a couple things. I was like, a couple ideas. You really can't track somebody in a building, I felt. And therefore I kind of rolled that, no, you really can't. And he's like, all right, well, can I try and track the kitchen? He's like, got a favorite enemy of dragons, so maybe dragon cheese. And I kind of humor my players and kind of let them have a little bit of fun. I said, sure, there's a such thing as dragon cheese. You can track dragon cheese. And Sam rolls, and he rolls a nat 20. And I said, you can almost see, as you smell the dragon cheese, you can almost see it. Like a little wispy trail that leads into it leads into the door the guard told you, and as they follow it leads down the corridor and leads you into the kitchen. And sure enough, you can kind of see a wheel of dragon cheese kind of off a ways in the kitchen, almost glowing, kind of almost enshrouded in this color. And the player's like, all right, great. Now this is where we kind of had a great moment, and I really liked it because Elias then got a moment to kind of use the fact that she was a rogue. She's a halfling rogue named Osborne, and Elias says that they're gonna sneak their way, and they're gonna kind of use their stealth and rogue skills to put together this platter. And so they go in, and I basically said, all right, roll investigation check to get where the cheese is. And Elias is able to get over to the cheese and grabs the cheese and says, all right, where's the olives? I said, roll investigation. She rolls investigation. They find the olives. They go over. And as they're moving into the kitchen, I explained earlier that it was a very bustling kitchen with people moving around all over the place. So I said that, roll dex save, kind of to avoid, being bumped into and, kind of dodging people. So now Elias has to make dex saves every time she goes somewhere in the kitchen. And she rolls, and she does fairly fine. At one point, after getting the olive, she fails the dex save and has to I had her roll a strength save. Okay, you bump into somebody, bumps into you. Can you hold on to the olives, basically? Because otherwise, you drop the jar of olives. Now you've got a new problem on your hands. Well, they roll just fine. So they manage to hang on to the jar of olives, and they're able to get the platter after another investigation check, and then they're able to get. Then they're able to get out of there. They're able to make the platter real fast, with the knife. And I explained, it's not the prettiest of platters, but it'll do the job. You guys will get through. So now they got this cheese and olive platter, which they went with cheese because a cheese platter, I guess, is, kind of common, I guess, and olives because they felt Fritzolas is fancy, so therefore olives. I don't know. I was like, whatever. All right, they go with it. So they are using their cheese platter, and they're able to make their way through the castle. And because they've been through this castle, I gave them bonuses to their history checks. So they're trying to remember, okay, maybe where is everything roughly. So they managed to get close, and I explained you guys are kind of close. You're not quite sure. You think it's in this general area. At which point, Elias just says, "All right, well, again, I'll go rogue. I will go stealth my way and check doors out and everything." And that's what to do. I had them roll a stealth check. They roll well, and I said, all right, kind of, people don't at least notice you, or at least don't bother you. Roll investigation check as they check, all these different doors. They kind of go up and down a couple corridors, and I explain, they're like, all right, I'm looking for ornate doors, because ornate doors probably means an important person's room. And I explain, well, there's two. You see one kind of along wall of holes. There's one that's down kind of the end of its own corridor, and to me, they're like, that's it. Investigation check, perception check. I want to look through the keyhole of the one down the hallway. Can I see anything? And I explain, you can see a bed, you can see you can see a desk, you can see it's fairly roomy, very nice room. And you're like, all right. Elias goes back, gets the rest of the party. They come down to the door, and they're like, all right. And Sonia's, of course, like, all right, he's probably in here. So she ducks into another side room, changes, puts on her armor real fast. They come back, they said, all right. Kicking down the door, and they kick down the door, and they all breach in like they're playing Rainbow Six or something like that. They come in, and the room's empty. And I think sometimes a player can take that where they got their plan and then it doesn't quite work, and they take that as, oh, the DM's just trying to screw us. But I think the players were like, nope, okay, we just chose the wrong option, we made the bad decision. And I think they got that, and I was pleased to hear that. Well, the problem is I had them roll a stealth check when they kicked the door open, and they failed their stealth check, so it was fairly loud. And I explained that, you guys can hear some voices, coming down the hall, some guard voices, and they're like, oh crap. They're like, okay, they're like, of course, did we kick the door down? Did we kick the door open? I said, oh, you just kicked the door open, you just broke the lock. The door just swung open. They said, all right, sweet, we're gonna close the door, we'll stick a chair, underneath it, so the door is blocked. And then Elias is like, well, I'll cast Minor Illusion on the door, right by where we kicked it and locked, so it looks like it hasn't been damaged. And I said, all right, that works. The guards come, you can hear the voices kind of, I don't hear anything, nothing looks kind of out of the ordinary, and they just go back. And the guards had just barely kind of heard the stealth check, heard the failed stealth check, so I kind of said, they're not really sure they heard anything. They're kind of feeling like, maybe, well, okay, there's no obvious sign, so we're probably just hearing things. And they go back. Of course, the players take the time, at this moment then to kind of, search the room. They're like, all right, investigation checks. Are there any secret walls? Are there any secret doors? Are there any, magically stuff? And they said, you can smell a little bit of magic. I described it. They'd ask her, are there any, wobblies? Any, sort of, kind of hazy stuff to indicate maybe a magical effect. And I said, no, there's not. Now, there might have been, because they just filled all their checks to find out, but there really weren't any. So they kind of, not toss the room, but they kind of go through the room, and they find, they go check, a jewelry box, and I explain, there's a ring in there that definitely is sent. You can sense the magic off of it. I just said, it's a ring of spell storing. So Danny's like, oh, sweet, ring of spell storing. Puts it on his finger. Sweet. They go through his desk, okay, they find his journal, and they read it. And the entry, they find, the entry from yesterday, and it's and it reads, body count should be sufficient. Still no sign of the old friends. Tomorrow, planning to test ritual. Ritual circles should be ready. Hopefully Orcus likes his sacrifice. And the players are like, oh yeah, he's definitely down in the dungeon. And I was like, yep, he's down in the dungeon. I didn't actually say that, but I think it was pretty obvious kind of that when they said that I kind of gave expressions and looks of like, yeah, he's down in the dungeon. So the players, like, all right, well, now we need to get down to the dungeon. And then they come up with a good idea. Since Sonia is still in armor, Sam has a pair of handcuffs. They handcuff Sonia, and they kind of take her to the set of guards. And they're like, all right, hey, we caught this, people caught this when they brought us to her. And the guards are like, oh, sweet, we'll take her from here. And as they're leaving, Sam casts Hunter's Mark, which basically just allows him to, like, he gets advantages against he gets advantage on tracking that target. So he casts that, and they take her away. They take her down some corridors, and after the guards, disappear from view, Sam's like, all right, I roll survival to track her. And he fails his tracking, so I said, all right, they kind of went down this corridor, and they took a turn. And rather than actually be able to track them, they more just kind of said, all right, let's find something that looks like maybe a stairwell down to the dungeons. And they kind of wander around and meander a little bit, but they do find the stairs pretty quickly. And just that happens, I kind of, switched back to Sonia. I said, Sonia's the guards take you down, flights of stairs, kind of down to the dungeons, and kind of as you guys get towards the bottom, Sonia says, all right, I want to kick one of them. And I said, sure, all right. She rolls to kick, she hits the guard, she, kicks him, and, the guy, she managed to kick him in the gut, so, he doubles over, and immediately, the guards are like, all right, well, that's it, and they kind of start, beating on her. She said she had fallen to the ground when she went to fall to the ground before kicking, so that she's already on the ground, so all the guards are, getting advantage on her, and sure, she's wearing her armor, so her AC is, 20, but the guards are dealing some damage, and they're kind of starting to beat on her, like, oh, how dare you to kick us, get down, or filth and stuff like that. Which I kind of added that because I know Sonia had actually told me at one point. She's like, I really liked it when I had that, when she dealt with that racism back in the City of Elves. So I was like, all right, I'll throw more racism in there. And they say I throw on slurs and stuff like that. And I just kind of explained that, hey, they're throwing racial slurs and stuff like that. And I didn't say too much because of course I don't say those kind of things. So I'm like, they say terrible stuff. And that worked. And she's beat on it. And the players, the other players can at the table know that Sonia's being kicked, so they kind of, as they're getting closer, like, okay, can we hear kind of the struggle? And I said, roll perception checks, and sure enough, they can hear Sonia being kicked. And I said, it's not like the guards are being super quiet about it. So they're like, all right, fine. So they go and they get down and they come around the corner, and I sort of it's kind of more of a squarish flight of stairs. So they come around the corner, and Sam's like, okay, I'm gonna come around the corner and I'm gonna draw my bow. And I said, all right, roll initiative. Because most of the guards see that. They're going to, of course, naturally attack. And we roll up initiative real fast. And it took us a 30-minute long combat. And there was some damage. But, Sonya managed to break free of her chains at one point. She draws her weapon. She hacks down the guards. Sam, is able to beat some people at one and things go well. Meanwhile, poor Elias is not having much luck. Because Elias said Elias keeps trying to use the one ranged ability they've got, which is a chill touch spell, and just keeps missing. Just absolutely awful. And the problem is, Elias explained that they're not great at close quarters combat, but this is the only real range, so that's all they had. And the combat went fairly quickly, and the people took some damage, and things went all right. It was at this point we kind of had Esther came in. She had some stuff she had to finish up before she was able to come to the session. So at this point she shows up right as they're kind of finishing up the combat. And at this point we had a bit of a guest star come in. So this episode we had an old friend return to us. Sydney was able to make this session. She only was able to make it throughout the second half, but I told her, hey, come whenever you can. So she showed up. And so she was saying there, of course, everyone's super excited, and everyone's like, oh, here, you can play this person, we'll play your character. And I said, nope, I know Sydney's going to play it. I've got this one covered. The player's like, all right, so now we come back, and at the end of this combat, they're at the bottom, they're at the dungeon now. I described it as, there's no one else in here. All the cells are empty. There's nobody, guarding them. And the player's like, that's interesting. And Sam's like, can I use my survival to check for signs of where people moved recently? And I said, sure. You find a little bit dirty footprints, of some boot prints of people moving. But they've kind of been smeared, so they were clearly something's been drug over it. And people are like, oh, so these are drug over it. Where does this all kind of lead to? And I explained it leads to the far wall. And they're like, okay, so they go to the far wall, they're kind of feeling it, and they're like, okay, can we sense like a magic or a secret door? And they roll investigation. They can sense something's not quite right, but they can't figure out what exactly. They go to an Arcana check. Sure enough, they can sense kind of a section of the wall about the size of a door is warm. Okay, clearly secret door. They're trying to figure out, okay, can we push on it? Will it budge? Can we pull on it? Does it budge? Nope, that's working. They're like, they're checking, and I had like, okay, there's like a spot on the side that was like, that on the far side that they hit would go, but they didn't check that. They just kind of were checking right around the wall. And finally Sam says, I cast Counterspell, which instantly beats any third level spell, and you have to roll a check. And I said, all right, roll an Arcana check. And he rolls like a 16. So I knew he would kind of beat it. But then I had this dilemma. Okay. And I what I said is like, I came to this dilemma. Okay, him countering spell could do two things. One, it could just cancel out the spell entirely and the door is stuck there. Or it could kind of like, short circuit things and the door would slide in. And I sat there, I kind of thought, and I hemmed and hawed for I think a good 2-3 minutes. And somebody said, just do whatever is flashier. And I had explained the dilemma after like 2 minutes. People are like, wait, okay, what's going on? I said, well, this is my dilemma. And they're like, all right, do whatever's flashy. And I said, all right, you know what, Sam? I said, Danny, you rolled 16. The door slides open. I just kind of gave it to the players, but I figured they had tried. He had come up with, I think, a good idea of trying to use Counterspell. So I gave it to them. I said, the door slides open. And they're like, okay, we're gonna go through real fast. And what do we see? And I said, you see, there's people in the cells now. It's like almost an extension of the dungeon. And there's people in the cells. There's, you see a couple soldiers, and you see an old friend of yours. And they're like, oh, who is it? I was like, the head turned. It's like, old friends, it's good to see you. And of course, it's Fritzolas. Nice to see you're still alive, although I wish it wasn't that case. And he starts kind of talking to me, and so it's like, I go up to him and I stab him while he's monologuing. I said, all right, roll initiative. She's like, but I get surprised. No, Sonia, you don't get surprised because you can obviously see you. She's like, fine. So we roll up initiative, and the final battle commences. So they roll their initiatives, and the party gets pretty good initiatives. I rolled separate initiatives for Fritzolas, and I rolled one for his soldier minions. And I used minions here because I felt it'd be kind of cool if he had some guards, but I felt also I didn't really want to keep track of, actual, full soldiers with a couple of abilities and having to keep track of hit points and stuff like that. So I just rolled them and I just used minions. And actually, they stay up for quite a while. But at this point, I also handed Sydney a piece of paper. And everyone's kind of curious, and she starts looking at I had her kind of find some stuff for her to kind of build up, and it was a character sheet for who she was going to run. And the party kind of gets the first go, and, I'm not going to give the exact play by play, but basically they kind of start attacking her. They start attacking Fritzolas, of course. They take down some of the guards. But on Fritzolas' first turn, the first thing he does is there's a body actually outside of the cells, and he kind of looks over, he reaches out over it, and he just says, Ivy, your time is not yet over. I have work for you to do. Rise! And immediately, Ivy, the Drow cleric, their old party member, gets up, and this was who Sydney was playing. I knew that I wanted Ivy to kind of make a return in the castle. Sure, she had died at the village, but I felt, again, she was already resurrected once by Fritzolas. I wanted there to be kind of a second, kind of again, like, hey, he's a lich. Beating death is nothing for him, so therefore, of course, he's able to bring back one of his old lieutenants. And I thought it would be kind of, again, to get another chance at meeting her. And so she comes back, and so now Sydney is getting played Ivy, who has been super buffed up, and is now a death cleric, basically. And then I had him with his other turn. I maybe this was a bit much, but I felt I wanted to kind of get all the cards on the field, and there's a little bit like, let me do this now before things really kind of go down the toilet. Then he's like, and let me bring back another old mutual friend of ours, and he reaches out, and a glowing door appears nearby. Out from it emerges a giant skull with a glowing eye in its center, and Elias is immediately like, no! And everyone's like, what? And I was like, and she's like, it's the Death Tyrant. And everyone's like, crap. Of course, everyone's freaking out because, the Death Tyrant was hard enough already and they've fought the Lich before. They know he's also pretty tough. I mean, so the two of them, they're like, oh, we have to fight two big baddies? Man, this could be hard. I mean, they were like, seriously? And I was like, this is the case. This is what happens. This is it, guys. This is the end game. this is where you guys are going to get challenged. And they kind of complained a little bit at first, but I think they kind of like accepted their fate pretty well. So they start going, the battle goes, and people are kind of, they take down some of the soldier minions, and actually two stayed up. They took out 2 soldier minions pretty quickly. They dealt a lot of damage to Fritzolas on Elias's turn. Literally, the death turret gets summoned on Fritzolas' turn. Like, I think Elias went next after Fritzolas. And Elias cast Tasha's Hideous Laughter on the death tyrant, which basically means that it falls to the ground uncontrollably laughing, basically goes incapacitated until it can make its wisdom save. And I roll a wisdom save, and it fails. And the thing stayed on the ground for about 3 or 4 rounds, where it just stood there and laughed and laughed and laughed. And I was surprised on how low I rolled, because at the same time, Sam also shot, after they had dealt some damage to Fritzolas, he then shot an arrow with a level 5 ensnaring strike on the skull. And on each of its turns, it takes a bunch of damage. It took like 46 damage on each of its turns because of the ensnaring strike. And because it takes damage, it would get advantage on its wisdom save, but it still failed. I mean, Osborne, Elias's new rogue, doesn't have a super high DC, and Death Tyrants have a decent wisdom modifier. It's like, I think, a +3 or so. So you would think that naturally it would be able to beat it pretty quickly. Well, no, it stayed down on the ground for 3-4 turns. Basically, Fritzolas was almost dead by the time that thing finally got up. Now, meanwhile, Sydney gets to her turn, and she asks me this question. She says, "Peter, does Ivy have free will?" And I thought about it. I was like, well, kind of. And I explained that Fritzolas has the spell Resurrection, which allows a person to come back. However, if you're in the book, Resurrection requires that the person be willing. Anytime you resurrect a person, the spirit has to be willing. However, I ruled because Fritzolas is a lich, and liches kind of are kind of not spawns, but are kind of usually tied to Orcus or another god of death, that he would have kind of some special powers. He would be able to kind of push. He would be able to kind of like get some special like over death. So therefore, he was kind of able to force Ivy back into her body to resurrect her. And so I kind of said, yeah, kind of, but you're kind of his thrall in a way. And she's like, cause she, and I could tell she was kind of wanting to break free of Fritzolas' control. And so I was like, all right, I'll make you a deal. Beat Fritzolas' spell save DC of 18 by rolling a disadvantage wisdom save. And if you beat it, you are free from Fritzolas' control, and you can do whatever the heck you want. And Ivy's like, okay, and Sydney's like, okay. She rolls a 12 and a 10. Now, her wisdom save DC, being a cleric, is +8. So she rolls basically a 20 and an 18, and she breaks free. And I describe it as kind of, you've seen your friends here, like your old party members. These were your friends before you died, and he kind of came back. You kind of been obeying him, kind of for your brains. And she explained that her brain has kind of been screwed up by dying technically twice now, so that's why she went from being I think chaotic neutral when she was originally in the party to now being chaotic evil. And so I kind of let her kind of be a third party in the fight, which was kind of cool. And so she goes and she just starts wailing on Fritzolas. She starts pulling all sorts of stuff. But she uses a lot of spells that were kind of, I think, to kind of play the chaotic evil. She played a lot of spells that were like area effects and stuff like that. At one point, she summons like a spiritual guardian or something like that. And she summons Anubis, which is kind of she summons an avatar of Anubis, which is her god. And it does a bunch of damage to everyone within 20 feet, which included half the party. So, for instance, and it knocked Esther was unconscious. It knocked her down, killed the minions. I mean, it dealt quite a bit of damage. I mean, it was damaging even the party members, along with Fritzolas. At another point, she summoned an insect plague, the same thing, kind of an area effect as it does the party a bunch of damage. I mean, she certainly was a third party in the fight. I mean, you had Fritzolas and the Death Tyrant versus the party versus Sydney. Except the party really didn't go after Sydney, and of course I think it was because they recognized that, hey, Sydney's fighting Fritzolas, and Ivy, and Sydney's character Ivy is an old friend of ours. We really don't want to fight her. And so they were mostly kind of ganging up on Fritzolas. And again, I doubled Fritzolas' his HP, because again, I had 6 people in there wailing on him. Of course he's gonna go, his HP is just gonna drop. We're talking just drop. But I was okay with that, and it allowed him to have a couple turns. It allowed him to kind of, do some things. At one point, he he's able to like stun person, and at one point, I looked up his most powerful spells. I think he's like an 18th level wizard, and so he does have 9th level spells, and he knows power word kill. And I looked at it, and I kind of said, turned to Sonia. I said, Sonia, you basically die. When I first said it, I said, Sonia, you die, and she's like, what? I was like, which I said, what I want you to do is you're going to drop unconscious, and you're going to take one death saving failure. Now, power word kill reads that if the target has less than 100 hit points, which Sonya has, even at her max HP, she's got less than 100. It says you instantly die. Flat out. Nothing. There's no rolls, there are no saves, nothing. You die. But I was like, that's no fun. That's garbage. It's okay as a player to use that on your enemy, because that's dramatic, that's cool, because you've had to work as a player to get to 9th level spells so you can cast it. But to just be like, just pull out a enemy to just kill a player instantly, that's not fun. That's garbage. So I figured, okay, she's already got one failure, so she's close. She still has to roll, and stuff can kill her. And it was quite interesting, because then, then she took more damage from, Sydney casting area effects. Sonya took another failure. But then Danny stabilized her, so she was back up. Well, then she took more damage from another Sydney spell. So she was, once again, once again goes down and has one. And she took more damage and rolled a failure. And she died. Sonya died in this session. And everyone was kind of like, whoa. And the thing is, she wasn't even actually the first to die. Because prior to that, after all the spells, Esther took some damage from Fritzolas. She goes unconscious. Then Sydney, pops in and just starts throwing spells all over the place. She goes down. She takes a failure, and then she rolls her death saving throw, and she rolls a 1, which means you take 2 failures, which gave Esther her 3rd failure, which means Esther died as well. Esther was actually the first to die, and I think she's technically the first character to die in one of my campaigns ever. Let me think about that. Yes, Esther was the first character to die ever. And I feel really kind of bad because, she was also the person that lost her sword Phasm, and then she dies. But she took it kind of like, okay, I died. That's too bad. I really like this character. But, okay, I died. And the moment she died, I said, hey, guys, now I want you guys to know that, yes, Esther died. But let's remember that resurrection, bringing people back to life, that happens in my world. That's a normal thing. Normal. You gotta be high-powered, but I'm not going to say, oh, you can't bring people back because X, Y, and Z reasons. I was like, no, if you find someone who knows resurrection or something like that, boom, bring people back to life. So I think there was kind of this idea of, well, maybe we'll bring El Moria back to life or something. But the battle continued. Danny goes down. He goes unconscious. At one point, he used one of his, one of his abilities. And I said, why don't you roll me a Wild Magic Surge? And he rolls it, and he summons, in his wild magic, he summons a Modron, which is basically a clockwork little creature. And he's like, can I have the clockwork creature, can I have the Modron, heal me? And I said, you know what, if you roll me, be a 16 persuasion check, sure. And he does that, and the Modron, comes over and, patches him, and then disappears, basically, because the thing only lasts for, a couple rounds. So, Danny's not dying yet, but, Sonya and Esther are both dead. Sam's at half health. Elias is in the back, basically just kind of trying to do chill touch and make sure that the Death Tyrant doesn't wake up. Or rather, I should say, doesn't stop laughing. At which point, after Sonya died, there was kind of a little bit of arguments, this is super hard. I was like, well, guys, you talked about using your Darren's Injured Fortress. You also talked about throwing in your Balor, and I told you guys when you guys first said it, hey, because there was this issue of okay, well, where is it? They couldn't find it in any of their character sheets, and they knew they had it. And I said, all right, guys, for the sake of, you guys would have it. You guys would have it, so you guys would know where it is. So if you guys want to use it, that's okay. Go ahead. And I told them this at almost the beginning of the session, right before they ran out for Renevas. That's what I told them. And they even mentioned pulling out the Balor at one point, very early on in the battle, or maybe it was right before the battle. They were like, we should pull out the Balor and from the Iron Flask and use that. And I was like, yeah, if you guys can do that. Or or should use the Darren's Injured Fortress and throw it at Fritzolas and then tell it to expand, because then it deals a ton of damage to whoever is kind of in the way of it expanding. That kind of stuff. And I was like, sure, go ahead. If you guys want to use it, go ahead. But again, they didn't do it, and so I was like, well, you guys know you could have done it, but you didn't, so it's your own darn fault. You guys died, and I was okay with that. it was kind of, sorry, it was kind of almost nice to see them die. There was a little bit of kind of like, hey, people die. That happens. Players die. You guys aren't immortal. You guys aren't invisible. You can die in your adventures. But, you know, Sonya, I think Sonya kind of, she was a little upset, but she wasn't upset, but she was kind of more just like, ah, that sucks. But then, you know, at this point, you know, Sam's like, all right, that's it. I'm pulling out the Iron Flask. And I said, you know what? Fine. Go ahead. Do it. You've got the Iron Flask. Pull it out. He pulls it out, unleashes the Balor. Of course, the Balor just starts ripping things to shreds. The Balor's actually the one to kill Fritzolas. The Balor comes in with its lightning sword and just cuts Fritzolas basically in half, and then with his whip just reaches back and whips the Death Tyrant, which actually managed to wake it back up, but that wasn't too big of an issue. Then, like, you know, kind of comes around, the thing got a couple moves, and I just had it, I of course, with its Death Tyrant, it rolls random effects, and I rolled its Disintegration Ray twice and its Death Ray once, and it just fires it at the Balor, so the Balor actually dropped, like, almost to half health. I didn't even, like, do all the calculations, because I would have to roll, like, 30 dice total, but the thing took a ton of damage, and I explained, like, you know, the Balor, like, you know, drops to, like, you know, kind of, like, staggers for a second, roars, and, you know, people are like, oh, wow, the Death Tyrant just wrecked our Balor. Then it comes down to, like, you know, Sydney's turn, and Sydney says, can I pray to my god? I said, absolutely, you can pray to your god. And Sydney says, all right, I'm going to pray my god, Anubis. I'm going to say, Anubis, I've been a faithful servant. I have served you well. I have even killed the lich. Now, I ask you to resurrect those around me who have done me no ill, and in return, take my life at the end of this battle. Which basically meant she would resurrect just Sonya and Esther, because those are the only people in the area around you who haven't done you ill. And so so what I explained it as, from one of her previous, when she summoned there was some sand on the floor kind of from one of her previous spells. She had summoned, like, you know, Anubis's avatar. Anubis, like, disintegrated into dust when he was finished with his work. And, you know, I just ruled it, like, you know, the sand off the ground kind of, you know, turns into smoke and rises into the air and shoots up the noses of Esther and Sonya, and their bodies come back up to life. And I said, guys, roll your hit dice once. That's how much hit points you have. So they roll, and they each have, like, 5 hit points. And immediately they're like, all right, let's do this. It comes to the Balor's turn. The Balor, like, turns around, like, teleports right next to the Death, right, and just starts wailing on again. It gets, like, 3 hits. It gets 2 with its longsword, 1 with its whip. And so it's just on the Death Tyrant. I explained the Death Tyrant's, like, skull, like, just starts cracking. Like, its eye starts blinking. Comes to Esther's turn, she's just like, you know, I cast Chromatic Orb, she does a little bit of damage, and Sonya, she's like, I run over, I activate my Action Surge. She basically pulls out all the stops. She makes, like, 6 attacks, most of which she succeeds, and one of which she even got a 20 on. And she rolls, and I just said, Sonya, figure out the damage, but I guarantee you kill it. Now, this was all kind of taking place. The last little bits here with the people getting resurrected and them actually killing the Death Tyrant all took place after 11 o'clock. I mean, we stopped at 11:15. Parents were already starting to show up to pick kids up, and I kind of told them, like, hey, can we have, like, 5-10 minutes? Come on in, like, 5-10 minutes, we're almost done. And the parents were pretty, like, understanding, because I think the kids have told them kind of what's going on. So they kind of knew, okay, this is kind of it. This is the end. Let's let them have their couple more minutes. And so I basically said, all right, you guys kill the Death Tyrant. Sydney's body, like, you know, dissipates into smoke. And she's like, you know, kind of, she explained, like, hey, with my last kind of breath, I want to cast Power Word Healing. And she heals the party like a bunch of health. I explained it as, you know, as her body, like, you know, dissipates, it turns into smoke, which, like, you know, kind of rushes up everybody's noses to heal them. And that was it. That's where we ended. That was the end of it. And I kind of said, hey, guys, that's it. You guys have killed Fritzolas, finally. It's over. And I kind of wish we'd had, like, you know, 5 minutes just to kind of be like, hey, just to kind of be able to bask in the fact that we did it. We finally did it. Now, I told the players, and I think I had previously kind of talked to them, that yes, this is the end of the campaign. But I plan on still running for these guys. Exact same characters, more or less. Braden has talked about switching characters, and I'm okay with that. Run for the same group in the same place, and just kind of the aftermath. And now you guys can kind of do more of what you want. And I think the players are kind of looking forward to that. And so when we start up the next session, we're going to start basically right there. There's going to have to deal with the aftermath, so I'm going to have to plan that out. What happens now? Like, you guys have killed Fritzolas, but kind of what happens exactly right after. I have some ideas of kind of, what's going to, kind of the slightly bigger scale stuff of what happens, but, immediately happened. Like, you guys just basically just killed the king. Now what? It's not going to be super, like, automatically everyone's happy and stuff like that. No, there's going to be some consequences. So I'm kind of excited to figure that out. I think the players are kind of looking forward to being done with it. I'm glad to be done with this campaign now. It's been, almost 2 years. Come September, it'll be 2 years that we've been running this campaign. And yeah, I'm glad to be done with it. Sounds bad, but I'm glad. There was a lot of things I learned from it, and I think I'm ready now to kind of take them to the next level. Take them, kind of say, all right, guys, here's your freedom. Kind of do whatever the heck you want. Here's stuff that's going on that you guys can engage with. And I think I'll be turning my kind of the way I run the campaign more into how I run the D&D Red group with all my guys, Nathaniel, Teddy, and Anthony. And we'll see how my players respond to that. I did get some some suggestions from them of what they like, kind of some of the things that had happened previously in the campaign that they really thought was great, and therefore I can kind of say, all right, how can I maybe kind of replicate those kind of ideas? Now, this is the finale of the Fitzherbert Chronicles. What exactly am I going to do after this, as far as this channel? I don't quite know. I've considered, maybe kind of just kind of doing like a story time with Peter, where I tell you just stories from my group. I've had stories from where I've been a player, stuff like that. Maybe kind of just, hey, here's some fun stories. Here's some fun things that happen. Here's maybe some ideas. I'm not quite sure. I'd also like to hear what you guys have to think. So if you're watching this video, please do send a comment of what would you like more of. If you want just more storytelling, I'll happily tell more stories. If you want to hear more of kind of maybe lessons I've learned, we'll do that. Maybe we'll have just kind of, D&D lessons. Kind of, here's just some things I've picked up on over my almost 2 years of playing / DMing. In the meantime, guys, there's probably going to be a bit of a hiatus from this channel. I know we just kind of had one with me having finals here a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to need, I might need a couple weeks, and that might give me a chance to maybe kind of stockpile. I'm also going to be going back to work full time, so we'll see. Playing will be a little more scarce, as currently my job is afternoons and evenings, which means it's not going to be easy. It means anytime I can really play here for the first couple months, it means I can only play in the morning and early afternoon. And it means I can only play on Saturdays, as most of my players are still in high school and still are thus in school. So we'll see how things go exactly. We will figure this out as we go. If things go too long without really any videos, I'll try and give you guys a quick update like I have a couple times to kind of say, hey, here's the situation. Maybe here's a quick story, something like that, to kind of tie you guys over. I'll give you more details as we get going. And as always, guys, thank you guys for sticking through. It's been like, what? We've had some 20, 30, I think we've had roughly 30, 31 episodes or so. I think this is episode 29 should be. I'm doing the math right in my head. But yeah, it's been quite the adventure. And it's been quite the adventure for me, just learning, and I think also just doing this, making this epic campaign that's taken almost 2 years to go through. The players started off as, this entire party, save for Sydney and Sonia, have never played D&D before, and now they are 8th level. I think some of them are going to level up to 9th level from the experience they got. They got almost like 9,000 points of experience. So some of them have become incredible characters, and they've done a lot of stuff. And I think some of them are ready to kind of take their characters to the next level. It's been it's been the adventure. It's been quite a nice time running for them, and I've enjoyed it. I've had a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing what happens next. I hope you guys are too. And as always, stay cool.